Hello crafty friends, this is the Paper Chef here. In today's Brother Scan and Cut Tips and Tricks tutorial, you are going to learn 3 different approaches to cutting out stamped sentiments. The sentiment we'll be using is the Merry Christmas sentiment from the Tag Buffet stamp set by Stampin Up. The machine we'll be using is the SDX125. You can follow along with any type of stamp you have, and it doesn't matter if it doesn't have a script font. It could be just a stamp like this. It doesn't matter, because really the point is you're going to have to connect it to make it one object before we cut it out. And that's going to be the theme throughout this whole thing. You're going to hear me say that many times. So take your stamp set, any stamp set you want, follow along with me, and use whatever machine you have. This will work with any of your scan and cut machines, all the techniques I'm showing you. Okay, I'm going to start out with a piece of Whisper White cardstock. I just happen to be using thick Whisper White cardstock, but it doesn't matter if you use thick or, our thin Whisper White cardstock by Stampin' Up, because it just would matter which blade depth you use. That's all that matters. We're going to take out the stamp, and we're just going to go ahead and do some stamping. Now this is called a photopolymer stamp. So when you use a photopolymer stamp, it often stains. It's no big deal. I mean, this is actually clean, believe it or not. It just stains because I've been using Real Red a lot. Okay, I'm just laying it down on the Whisper White and I'm lifting it up with my stamping block. This is stamping block H. Okay, I'm going to shut that. So just to give you an idea, this is a Tag Buffet stamp set that goes along with what's called a Tag Buffet project kit, or a kit. So I love using that. I have 3 of the kits now. I'm working on my second kit, and I thought, I need to make some extra sentiments. And I've just been getting so many questions about stamped images. I'm going to go ahead and stamp in Real Red. See, notice how I open up our stamp set and slid it back. The label's on the bottom. You can put the label right there so you know which stamp you have open. Anyway, so I've been getting a lot of questions about crafty friends having trouble with cutting out stamped sentiments, and there are just so many different ways to go about it that I thought I better just cover this in a comprehensive Brother Scan and Cut tutorial. Now we're going to do it 3 times. Yeah, we'll just do it 3 times. We're going to do it more later probably. So I'm not going to clean my stamp, because with all these different approaches we need to have stamped a few times. And I'm just stamping it right onto my Whisper White, and I'm going to go ahead and open up my SDX machine, and I need to get my mat. And so we'll get a mat, and we'll put it on the mat. And I'm just going to stick it on this side of the mat. It doesn't really matter where you stick it. Let's see if my mat's still sticky. It's okay. I mean, it's okay. It's been restuck recently. Just if it's not real sticky, I'd have to show you another trick on how to get this to stay on there. But we'll use all the tricks we need to. Now, this is very, very important. I mean, I can't say it enough, so I will say it. I will say it many times. You cannot do anything with this stamp. If you want Merry Christmas to stay together, let's put it that way. If you want Merry Christmas to stay together as one, meaning the 2 words Merry and Christmas, you have to connect them. There is no way around this, guys. Everybody's like all frustrated with the Scan and Cut, like it's the poor Scan and Cut's fault. It is not the Scan and Cut's fault. It's going to recognize this as 1, 2, 3, 4 objects. Why? Even the little eye. Well, especially this model. This model is an SDX. It's a much more sensitive scanner. I need to connect the eye to the letter, to the top of the eye to the letter, bottom of the letter. That was my mistake during the samples I'll be showing you. By the way, if you're new to my channel, I always show samples of my projects I create with these techniques. So go ahead and watch my samples. Now I need to connect the M and the E. I'm just using what's called my pencil trick. I have another trick I'll show you for the next round. I'm just connecting these. Now this is 1 word and this is 1 word. So actually technically I could cut these out as separate words now, but I at least needed to do that. Okay, so it's gonna now be considered 1 object, 1 object, 1 object. But I really want this to cut out together as, okay, so together. It kind of reminds me of the song from Grease. I'm doing that. Now, if you wanted them to be like a big, right now I'm just connecting them so there'll be a little bit of a bridge between the 2, and that's fine. But I could have connected them down here, then there would have been a bigger bridge between the 2. But you have to connect them. We're going to erase it later, but we're not going to erase it with the red eraser. We'll use a different eraser. We'll erase those marks. So that's all you need to do to cut out stamped sentiments. That'll probably alleviate half your frustration if you've been trying to cut out stamped sentiments and you couldn't. It's probably because they weren't connected. It doesn't matter if you're using script font, letter font. Everything that you cut out, if you want it to cut out as one, it must be connected. So now we're going to go ahead and load the mat with this button here. And sometimes it loads and sometimes it doesn't. So let's see if it did. Dun, 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 dun. Yes, it loaded. So there we go. And we're gonna see pattern and scan. We're gonna click on scan. We're gonna click on direct cut because we're directly cutting these out. And we're temporarily saving the data to our machine. That's just a temporary storage area. You could also save it to your online program, Canvas Workspace, see, but that's if your wireless is connected. 12x6 recognition area, that's fine. You have this on the SDX models. In other words, I don't need to scan any more than 12x6. 12x6 means that I'm scanning the top half of my mat. My mat is 12 inches long, but I only need to scan the top half. If you have a CM model, you're not going to see that option. Always use black and white recognition mode because you don't need color recognition mode for, see, it's black and white now. You don't need color for objects where there's good contrast like this. So first I'm gonna say okay, and I'm gonna frame my image. This is just dirt on my mat. Don't worry about that. And I'm gonna frame my image. There's my image. I'm framing it. That way I don't have to worry about all this business on the side here. We're gonna ignore small objects, just any extra dirt around the sides. I don't know, half an inch is good or an inch, it doesn't really matter. Just don't ignore objects too big because you'll be ignoring the very words you're trying to cut out. So let's just even say an inch, it doesn't matter. We'll cut it, it gets rid of all the extra stray bits. And now we say okay. Now, if we try to cut along, even though these are one object now, if I try to cut along them, it's a script font. So what I'm gonna get is a big kind of hot mess. You really don't want to cut along the lines. Just trust me, save yourself a lot of frustration and don't try to cut straight along the lines. You need to be a little forgiving and give it a little bit of an outline distance. So I'm going to go ahead and give it a 0.4 outline distance. And now you see that I have my script fonts are being outlined. And so I'm happy with that. And I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And I'm going to go ahead and cut out. I'm going to go click please select cut. And we're going to cut the Whisper White cardstock. We're going to say start. Leave all the settings at their default. Auto blade, auto pressure. If you're using a CM machine right now, then you would just go ahead and you would set your blade depth to a blade depth of 4 for Whisper White cardstock. And if it's thick Whisper White, that's the regular Whisper White. If it's thick Whisper White, then you would set your blade depth to 5 for if you're using a CM model. Okay, so what I'm doing now is I'm just cutting out the sentiments as they are. And I'm gonna then put a little bit of an outline around them, and then I'm still on technique number 1, even though I'm gonna put an outline around them. It's still gonna be technique number 1. I'm gonna let the camera roll, even though I usually pause it between cuts because we're very close to the end here. Not the end of the video, but the end of these cutting out. All right, so you say okay. Now, I'm not going to unload the mat. I'm just going to show you something. Okay, I'm going to show you something. I'm going to peel this off. This is the Whisper White. Pretty cool, right? So we've cut out our sentiments. Now what I want to do, you don't have to do this step. You already have good sentiments. I mean, you already have what you need. And I mean, I want you to keep watching the video to learn all kinds of ways to do this. But technically, I'm just looking for my little spatula, which seems to be missing in action. But technically, you have what you need, but you really can do so much more with stamped sentiments. So let's keep on going. So since my spatula is missing, I'm just going to bend them out a little bit and use what's called, I'm just going to use one of my craft scrapers to get that out. There is a little spatula that comes with your machine, and I want to get this off the mat, but it's very sticky, so be careful. Now the first couple times I did this, I did forget the dot on the top of the I. That's why I emphasized making sure the little eye is connected. And it didn't matter for the samples I'm going to show you because the eye is connected. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a piece. Here, we'll use this piece here. Let me just put that there. Pretty cool, right? Okay, and you can't get inside this one because it's too thin of a space, or too small of a space. Meaning this would be considered enclosed. Well, you can, but not with the techniques I'm showing you today. That's another whole thing, and I do have videos called Scan and Cut data, and that's when you cut the inside of the images, like the inside of this A and the inside of the C and S. But for this one, I don't think I need to do that. So I just don't need to do it for this type of stamped image. But and it's also a lot of extra work. So you have to decide what's important to you and when you need to do it. Also, what I noticed, and this is my SDX machine, is it's not as aligned as the ones I did earlier and the ones I did on a different model. Meaning it means that it's time to use, and I just did this yesterday, maybe, and the day before, and the day before that, but it's time to use what's called scanning, cutting, position adjustment, because there's a little bit extra white space down below than there is above. But you know what? It actually looks kind of cool. So I'm not going to worry about that because it's not really part of this lesson. So what I'm going to do is, just while I'm thinking of it, is now you don't want to use the red eraser. You know, don't use your red. Actually, you know what I could do is I can erase it while it's cutting, while the next little round is cutting. So I have another trick for not using the pencil for bridging these two, which we'll use in the next technique. But you do need to use the pencil for the little eye, because it's just too small of a spot to do any other way. So now I got rid of the little dot on the eye, so you can't, but it's connected, see? And I need to get rid of that little line between the Mary. So I'm still on technique number 1. Now what I'm doing now is, just because while I'm here, and I've been doing this a lot in my videos lately, is I like to show you how to make a little offset, a little outline. So we're going to use shaded spruce color. This is real red. All the Christmas colors pretty much go together real well. Like I took them all out to show you. We stamped in real red. Put that up there. Okay, we stamped in real red. Real red goes, cherry cobbler works well with this suite of what do we call it? This paper that I'm going to show you. This one works well with it. Shaded spruce. This is shaded spruce. And garden green works well with the tag buffet kit. So I'm using shaded spruce. What I'm using is, this is called Tis the Season Designer Series paper. See, basic black, cherry cobbler, garden green, real red, shaded spruce, whisper white. Okay, I'm not going to show you all these different papers now, but they're just amazing. I will tell you that this is 10% off right now during the entire month of, I'll link in the description to my store, my Stampin' Up store. During the entire month of October, this paper, this Tis the Season paper, 15 types of paper altogether are 15% off. So what I'm doing is I'm putting the piece of shaded spruce in the general area, which is the top right of my mat. You'll see why. I'm going to put it in the general area, and now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to increase my outline distance. I'll tell you more about the sale, let me just get this started, and then I can tell you about the sale. So we're going to go backwards. We're going to go back, go to the outline distance, and we're going to increase it to 0.08. We're making a bigger offset using this designer series paper. It's a really cool technique. You can do foiled papers. You can use cardstock for your backgrounds. I'm just using a coordinating piece of Tis the Season designer series paper. Okay, and it's going to be less detailed, so it doesn't take as long to cut, because it's kind of like, a big blob. It's going around, and so while I'm talking to you about the sale, so 10% off 15 types of designer series paper, including one of my favorites. This is one of my favorites, but really, a really favorite Christmas one is called Snowflake Splendor designer series paper. I just really need one of these to show you. But I'm going to sit and erase these if it's going to take long. So don't use a white, you can link to this type of eraser, or get it at like an Office Depot, or I'll have a link in the description. But this one doesn't make a stain on your paper, on your whisper white paper, this little white eraser. But when you use a red eraser, it makes a stain. So anyway, back to the designer series paper. If you've ever seen me use Whale of a Time with my Scan and Cut, Whale of a Time is a really great designer series paper. That's on sale. And Forever Greenery, World of Good, Specialty. There's so many. I didn't pull them out right now because maybe we'll do another video about that. But there are so many papers on sale. So let me just take let me take this one, the one I've erased already really well, and let me show you now the completed technique number one. Okay, technique number one is of cutting out stamp sentiments is actually cutting out the stamp sentiment right around the line. This is technique number one, cutting and layering. So what we did is, for this one, let me just make sure I'm focused here. And let me put another piece of paper here so you can really see this. And not all the dirt on my mat. Here's ones I did earlier. Let's find some paper. Okay, technique number one. Technique number one was you've learned the pencil trick and you learned how to layer stamped images. Okay, so sometimes I do videos on just cutting out stamped images, and these are a lot of tips and tricks you need for any kind of stamped image, whether it be a little critter like one of the goats or pigs or gnomes for Christmas or anything from this technique will work. You need to make sure everything's connected, there's no gaps, and you need to make sure that the scan and cut has something to recognize, and then you can use an offset. We used a 0.04 offset for the stamp sentiment, and then we used a 0.08 offset for the background layer. Okay, technique number one is in the bag. If you've seen my videos, technique number one should not be new to you. You should know the pencil trick. If you're new to my channel, please subscribe. Lots of tips and tricks. All right, technique number two is now we're gonna do something more simple, and then we'll go into something more complex. I'm save all these, and it really doesn't matter which one you match up with what, because they should all match. They should all work as good backgrounds. They should all be the same for all your other. All right, and you glue those together or pop them up with dimensionals. Technique number two. We need to stamp real quickly. Let me just tilt my camera. And we need our little sponge. This little sponge is just something I use. It comes with, it's kind of like a sponge that is in the stamping blocks, but we do sell silicone mats. I just like this sponge because I can wash it off real easy. You can also wash off your silicone mat. Technique number two, I just want you to make sure that when you stamp for technique number two, we'll use real red again. We'll use real red the whole time. Why not? I want you to make sure for technique number two, we're going to be making a box. We're going to cut out this whole thing as a box, as a rectangle, I mean. And I want you to know that you need to be far away from each other, because if not, it does this weird overlap and makes them all one giant image when you start trying to put rectangles around them. So I'm putting a little bit of a space between them, not too much, but a little bit more than I would when I was cutting stamp sentiments. So 3 is good. The idea here is we're going to put a rectangle around them. We're going to let the scan and cut do it. We're going to let it just recognize this as one big rectangle. But we still have the same problem. It still is 4 images. So let me get out my other, this is another little tip that I'm going to show you. Maybe I need to turn on the light. A little bit extra light there for you, for this tip. All right, so I'm going to zoom in. We're still going to do our little, like this, the tip I'm going to show you is just how to connect these two. I said, instead of erasing it, it's easier just to use a pencil when you have these little areas like that. That's easier, I think. Just use a pencil still. But when you have these big gaps, what happened is I started erasing and I started ripping. I started ripping these in half, and I was like, oh, that just defeats the whole purpose of all this work I did. Okay, so I just decided to use this trick. I used it in the past, but it's been a while, so I'm going to use this trick again. So you're going to take little pieces of washi tape, little strips of washi tape, and instead of using a pencil to bridge the two, you're just using a piece of washi tape to bridge the two. Why? Because it's painter's tape, but substitute painter's tape for in your craft stash. I know you all have washi tape, but washi tape tends to get stuck in the machines more than painter's tape. But I do videos on how to clean out your scanner glass and how to clean out your machine, so don't worry if you get painter's tape stuck in your machine. It's happened to me countless number of times. The bottom line is I'm not using a pencil to bridge the gap. I could have used this technique earlier, but then and it would have just outlined around the tape. But you can still use the pencil trick. I just like this trick because I don't have to erase the mark between them. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and turn that light out. So I hope you got to see that really well. And this technique is just called, I'm just going to call it the rectangle technique. We're just putting rectangles around these. But again, the scan and cut needs to think this is one image. So we're going to go back to our screen and we need to clear it off. So we have this, and we don't need this anymore. Let me get my stylus. Oh, look, there's my spatula, the one I've been looking all over for. Put that in the little cubby. Doesn't matter that I have cubbies and my mom makes Velcro pockets. I mean, it doesn't matter what pockets I have, I still lose it all the time. All right, so here we go. We're gonna go back, or actually just hit home. You just wanna delete everything and start again. We have stamped images. We're gonna use pattern and scan. We turn on a machine, we go scan, direct cut, same thing, right? Store it on our machine. It's on the top 6 inches of the mat, all that stuff. Same thing so far. And where it's different is we're not going to outline it directly. We're not going to outline the word with all the little humps and curves. Instead, we're going to make this a rectangle. So we're going to click OK. We still need to do that same little selection. We still need to make a selection around the objects. We still need to ignore any small objects. Whatever, up to an inch or so, it doesn't matter. Now we're going to click OK. And now we're going to use this option. Okay, we don't need to add the outline distance yet. We need to use this option. This is shaping. We're going to put shapes around these 3 objects. So we're going to go into the shapes, and you don't want to use circles because circles, they're not conducive. This is not a stamped image that's conducive to having a circle around it. You want to scroll down to the rectangle. So go down here, or it's a square, but it turns into a rectangle. And you want to use rectangles. Look how perfect that is. Oh, we love it, right? It's so perfect. It just does it for us. It puts rectangles around them. I love it, but I do like to say okay, and I like to go back, and I like to still put an outline distance, because if I don't, it's literally going to cut along this line so closely. It makes such a close rectangle that it's a little too close for my comfort. I like to put a little outline. You can put as much as you want, but I tend to put a 0.4. You're wondering, wait a minute, Papered Chef, what are these 2 things doing over there? Even though I made a selection around this area, when you use the select shape option to scan, it still goes back and gets the whole top half of the mat. So we need to delete those manually. It's just trying to select little specks it found, maybe some dirt it found. So let's just trash those. I'm going into the edit and I'm hitting trash because I don't want to cut out a random square. I don't even have any paper over there. My paper is on the right side, my cardstock. So there's our 3 rectangles. And we're going to select cut, and we're going to cut out perfect rectangles. Okay, I love this method. I use it a lot because it gives me nice, clean stamped sentiments, nice and clean. And you guessed it, we can then take this out, replace it with designer series paper, and you can make bigger rectangles. But I didn't do that for my projects because my projects are tags and they're already small. So, but you can do that. I mean, let's just say okay, and then I'll tell you what you could do. So what we don't even need to unload the mat again. We can just go like this. We can just go, I can show you this part. So we can just see if I need more light. Sure, why not? I'm gonna take this off. Now follow along with this thinking if I want to, but I don't want to. If I want to make bigger boxes around these. Let me get at my spatula now. It's always good to bend your mat when you have, if I want to make bigger outline distances around these, bigger and bigger rectangles, right? You just take these off, put the designer series paper on there, go back 1 step and hit, offset outline distance, and you say 0.08. And then you do it again, and you do 0.12. And you do it again, and you just keep on going up from there. So you can make your offsets. But you already know how to do that from the last step. And so I'm confident you know how to do that. So here we're just going to take our little, we're going to erase the little dot on the Christmas. And we erase the little dot. I erased it while it's still, the painter's tape is still there for support. Because these sentiments tend to kind of crumble up if you erase too hard. Okay? And really, you're going to end up with a lot of dust in your machine but this is how I clean it all up. I clean up my eraser marks just by sort of getting a piece of painter's tape and cleaning my eraser marks. All right, here we go. Watch how this peels off. This is so much easier than using a pencil. Voila, no erasing, no stray marks, no acetate trick. We've done acetate tracing. We've done all kinds of things to make the Scan and Cut think that things are one object, but we didn't have to do anything here except just erase that little mark and that little mark. And we have a beautiful stamp sentiment that you can then go back and outline. But for the projects I'm showing you, I didn't go back and outline it again. You could go back, outline it, make it bigger. All right, so now the last technique is kind of advanced, but it's not anything that my crafty friends can't do. If you've taken my courses, if you've taken my Scan and Cut courses online, you know how to weld to your heart's content. You've been welding with using Canvas Workspace, most likely. But let's just do some welding right on our machine. What are we welding? Why are we welding? All right, we are welding. It'd be really nice if the Scan and Cut just had a darn banner shape that worked. Build into it. Now there are, in Canvas Workspace, we can do so much more. It's so much easier. But sometimes I don't want to go to Canvas Workspace. I want to use my machine, and it'd be really nice to make a little banner. So let's start again. We're going to start back for this last technique. We're going to do two things for this last technique. We're going to make a banner meaning it has little points at the end. Okay, so that's one thing. We're going to learn to weld and make a banner. Part two of that is you're going to learn to background scan so that your stamped image gets cut out perfectly on the banner. So it's a twofold process. Now we're on technique number 3. We're going to hit the home button. Now let me explain. Let me turn back off my light. Wouldn't it be nice if when we went to pattern and shapes, wouldn't it be nice if there was just a banner with 2 sides on it? Let me show you the banner with 1 side. We're going to get the banner with, say, this one. It has 1 side, but I really like a shape that has this on both sides. And although there's similar, there's things you can turn into it, this was the easiest for me. I looked around. This was the easiest one. I think I can make the banner I want. Okay, so I'm going to click on this shape. It's called BA-A123. I'm going to just leave this here for 1 moment because I know a lot of you watch this on your televisions, and I don't want to go too fast where you didn't get a chance to see that I'm not using this banner. This is not a nice one. I'm using this banner shape. Okay, BA-A123. You have this shape in the different models of Scan and Cut. So we're going to click on that, and that's how we're going to get our little banner. So for now, we want the width to be, we want it to go like this way. We want it to go horizontally, but for now we're going to take the width and make it 1 inch. And the height will stay in proportion. Just leave it. We want the width. See, that's what we're worried about, the width. Because we only need the width to be 1 inch. We're going to be cutting out Merry Christmas. And I've already tested it. But of course, whatever sentiment you have depends on your width. So we're going to go 1 inch width. Now we need 2 of these because we're making a banner. We're putting 1 on that side of our banner and 1 on the right side. So we're going to click number 2. 2 of those. 2 shapes. Don't worry about the height. We only care about the width right now. It's 1 inch. The height will stay in proportion. We're going to set those on the mat. Can you start seeing how I'm going to create the banner? In fact, I just sometimes like to really, I really think it's important to stop and teach you the big picture before I get too far, so you know what I'm doing. I'm trying to make this. This is what I want. I want my Merry Christmas to fit on here. Merry Christmas. I want this little side and this little side, but to make it, I need 3 shapes. Okay? I need this shape. That's why I made 2 of them. I need that shape. I needed a rectangle shape to make this banner because it's not built into the machine. Okay? So we need 3 shapes, and then we're going to weld them together to make our banner. So that's what's going on. That's why I put those 2 shapes on the mat. So now we have to put a rectangle shape on the mat. And so to get a rectangle, we're just going to go add, and we're going to go pattern, and just pick a square. You could pick a square. You could pick a rectangle. It really doesn't matter because all that matters is that I want the height. Now we worry about the height. 1 inch height. Okay, and we can actually take off the proportion now because we don't want it to stay in proportion. We want this to be a rectangle. You can always start with a square and make it into a rectangle by making sure that it's not in proportion. So we want it to be 1 inch high to fit our sentiment and about 2 inches wide. 2 inches wide. It takes me a little while till my blog posts get published, and if you're on my newsletter, you might get to see some of those. Or if you go to thepaperedchef.com, I publish a blog post with all the description written out. And at that point, I update my video. Sometimes it takes me 3 days. Sometimes it takes me 5 minutes. But today I'm doing some World Card Making Day presentations on my Facebook page, and so I don't know when I'm going to get to be updating this. But don't worry if you missed the exact measurements. I'm going to have them in the description. Just give me a little time. I'll have them in the description. All right, so back to our picture. Here's our big picture. We need to turn these into a banner. So we need to rotate this guy and this guy. We don't need to rotate him. He's already a rectangle. So we need to rotate this one. So go click on this shape here. We're going to go to Edit, Object Edit, and we're going to rotate this one. Here's the rotate button. It has an arrow to the right. We want to rotate this one 90 degrees to the left, right? 90 degrees. So see that? See what's happening? Kind of get it so it barely touches. You want to make sure it sort of overlaps. It barely touches that shape. Now take your other banner and make it 90 degrees to the right. And barely touch it. And you're like, well, Paper Chef, that doesn't really look aligned. We don't have to worry about aligning it. Let's let the machine align these shapes for us. We're going to go into, well, first, the reason it's not letting us align, there's the Align tool. We can't align or weld yet. The reason is we only have one object selected. We don't have this one or this one selected. These all need to be selected. So we can't use this feature yet, the function. We have to select 2 or more patterns. So say, okay, here is the selection tool. You're going to go in there and you want to select everything. There's the select all. It's the one with the box with the shapes around it. So you select everything. Click OK. Now we can go to Object Edit, or this one. This one would work too, but just I'm trying to get used to using Object Edit. Go to the alignment tools. Now you want to do, first you want to align these horizontally so they're all aligned on the same plane. Okay, and then you want to distribute them so that there's the same amount of space on each side. Okay, and it doesn't really matter if you do this one, but as long as you align them in the center, they will be aligned. And for some reason, let me make sure that when I zoom in that they're all, okay, let's make sure. Yeah, no, they're aligned, but for some reason it almost looked like I made my rectangle a little too high. So where they're all aligned, I'm happy. And now select them all. They should have stayed selected. I deselected them. We select them all and we want to weld them, okay? We are going to join these as one. It's an irreversible action, but who cares, right? It's a scan and cut. What's going to happen? Don't be scared to weld. You're going to take this shape, and this shape and weld them together. So go Object, Edit, Weld. This is the weld button. Dun, dun, dun. It's going to say, okay, to weld the outline. It's irreversible. Yes. Yes. And we have a banner. How big's our banner? We're going to go find out. I'm going to tell you it needs to be, just so you know for your notes, if you want to fit this sentiment on it very nicely. Well, actually, here, let me just tilt it down. Well, first let me show you how big it is, and then I'll tell you how big it needs to be. So we're going to go Object, Edit, and we're going to go to Resize and see. 4.47. Perfect! Because I was going to say it needs to be somewhere between 4 1/4 and 4 1/2 when you're all done. It's going to change depending on how much you overlapped your shapes, but that's okay. As long as it's 1 inch high, that's what matters. So I'm very happy with that. Very happy. So what do? How do we get our Merry Christmas? Here we go with technique number 3. Well, that was part of technique number 3. But we're going to do this. Okay, now picture that you have a bunch of those. We're just going to stamp one. Picture that you have a whole page of these and you have a whole page of banners. Okay, so it's not going to be like taking as long as I'm showing you. I do a whole page at once. Now I'm just going to go ahead and take my sponge, and you don't have to see me stamp this last one because you know how I stamp. But I don't want to have to tilt the camera to save time. So what I'm doing is I'm tapping, and I'm checking that there's ink, and I'm stamping it. And I'm just going to do it once because I have one banner. Okay, so there we go. Putting this on the mat, and I'm actually even gonna tape it for good measure. This was my other trick. I'm always showing different tips and tricks I use. The reason I'm taping it is it cannot move because in relation to the banner, I want to make sure it stays in the right spot. Now, going back to the machine. So here's what's going on now. We are going to use you've learned about welding. You know about stamping and welding and all that. Let me focus in there. We're going to say, okay, if I were to cut this banner out right now, it's not going to land on the place where my sentiment is, right? My sentiment is in one spot, and it's not going to cut out in the right spot. So I'm going to use a feature called background scanning. There's the background scan, and we're going to click start. Background scan allows whatever's on the mat to be visible, and so I can move the shape I just created over the top of my sentiment. And what's wonderful about this technique is that I don't have to use any pencil marks. I can cut out my nice stamped sentiment inside of a shape, and I don't have to erase pencil marks or anything. I was pretty close though, wasn't I? I'm pretty proud of how close I was just by putting a stamp on the page. Now what I want to do is take, so this is my background, that's the part with the tape, and there's my shape. See that? And I was telling you need to have 1 inch by about, I'm gonna actually go in with the edit and make sure I get it just right. So we have 1 inch high, and you want to be no more than 4.5 inches wide. So to center it, I'm using these little arrows to nudge. Nudging is when you move things 1 pixel at a time. Okay, so method number 3 involves a shape, creating a shape, and it involves creating a shape using background scan, and now cutting out your stamped image perfectly using the shape you created. Okay, so let's just say okay, we're going to click OK, and it's going to cut. Now, you might be wondering a few things. Can I just use any shape? I hope you saw that. Let me go back because I was really zoomed in. Okay, let me go back. We hit OK after we were editing, just so you know, because I was really zoomed in. I was editing. I was using the nudge buttons. I don't know if you saw that because my camera was zoomed in, and I just noticed how much you were zoomed in. I was using the little nudges, and when I was done, I said OK, 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 and cut. Just making sure you didn't miss anything. I didn't mean to zoom in so much that you were like, whoa, the screen's in my face. All right, well, you might be wondering a few things at this moment. You might be saying, well, what if I have a shape? Like, what if I have a different shape, like that's not in the machine? Yes, you can use background scan. You can transfer any shape that you have from your machine, from Canvas Workspace to this machine. Once your shape is pulled up inside the screen, it doesn't matter that we just created the shape. This could very well be an SVG file, a cutting file that you have from your machine. Either way, we would use background scan, and I'm going to go ahead and unload the mat. We would use background scan, and we would stamp something, and we can cut out that stamped image inside whatever shape you want. Okay, so that might be something you were wondering about. So you can use any shape. So look at that. Dun, dun, dun. I think this is like the next best thing to slice bread. I mean, this is pretty cool. I didn't have to use pencil marks. I got a cool shape. My sentiment came in the shape. Let me get this designer series paper to show you that. Voila. So the possibilities are endless. Let me get my, and I'm going to show you what I did using this Merry Christmas stamp set and the techniques I just showed you. At the end of all my tutorials, I like to show you how to apply these to use, for your own projects. So we have what's called a tag buffet kit. It'll be linked in the description. My website should already be in the description, my Stampin' Up store. So what I'm saying is tag buffet. That's what I'm saying. That's what it's called, tag buffet. It's just that the actual product number will come later. So it's a tag buffet. And the tag buffet is pretty amazing. It comes with all the parts to make tags. All these little parts. Okay, but the sentiments that come with it, there's actually a little place to stamp some. They don't use the actual Whisper White cardstock. They use the cardstock that came in the kit, and I just don't think it has the same level of ink absorption as the same kind of ink absorption. So I like to use Whisper White cardstock. Look at the difference in ink absorption, even if I get the same color. Because you might say, Paper Chef, you're comparing apples and oranges. No, here's real red. Look at that. This is the one that came in the kit, the Whisper White, the cardstock, and this is my Whisper White. I just get such a better crisp image on my own Whisper White. So I like being able to get my own stamped images. I'm going to still use these. Anyway, back to the projects. I'm just letting you know why I would want my own tags. Plus I can make outlines for these. I can create offsets. I mean, I can do all kinds of stuff with these. I can put these inside all kinds of shapes. I can just extend my stamp set way beyond the tags that I created. So where are the tags I created? Here they are. I was like, wait a minute. I knew I had a bunch to show you. So we will start with the ones created using the first method. I have a few examples. So here's my examples of things I used the first method for. Tag buffet kit, just right out of the kit. All the supplies come in the kit. I outlined in shaded spruce. I did my tag. I like it because when you put this on top of this tree, you block a lot of the tree. But when you have this outline, it just kind of pops and it's layered. And I added my own little star from Most Wonderful Time product medley. All this little string came in the tag buffet kit. Okay, next one is just the same kind of tag. I just used the sticker from one of my paper pumpkin kits. And again, just tag buffet kit, layered tags. You can easily turn your tag into a card. I used an outline card, this piece from Most Wonderful Time product medley. These are already foiled sheets that came in that medley. I added a tag from the tag buffet kit and a double layered stamp sentiment. I didn't want to cover up the little cardinal, right? I just like not covering him up. And then the inside, may the good times of today become the cherished memories of tomorrow. Wishing you lots of love, joy, and happiness. And that came from Tag Buffet stamp set. Okay, so that's a card. So that's example number 1. That was technique number 1 you learned. Okay, and now technique number 2 you learned was taking your tags and cutting out rectangles. And this is the Tag Buffet kit. I just took the ones, this is Whisper White cardstock. You can see how Whisper White cardstock's just a slight different color than the Tag Buffet kit, but look at that real crisp image and good ink absorption. And there's another one, because the ones that came with it, you know, they work fine too. It's just a little bit different shade of white, that's all. I mean, it's not a big deal. I like the ones that came with it. I'm using those as well. So there's a couple tags I created, Tag Buffet kit, and here's a treat I created using, this is a diaper fold technique. Again, Tis the Season Designer Series paper, diaper fold technique. This is a little piece of heaven, Ghirardelli chocolate. You can also put a little tea bag in there. And I've shown on my channel how to create diaper folds as well. But that's the technique. And technique number 3, I just have one example to show you. And I used shaded spruce and I made a little banner. My banner is probably 4 1/4 inches, so it'll work with 4 1/4 or 4 1/2 when you do this technique, as long as your Merry Christmas fits inside your sentiment. And of course, use whatever sentiments that you have for your projects. All right, I hope you enjoyed these 3 tips and tricks on how to, the different approaches. Again, approach number 1, approach number 2, and approach number 3 to cutting out stamped images. I hope that pretty much covers how to cut out all your images and any questions you may have had about how to do that. And that's all for now. This is the Papered Chef. See you next time.